Welcome to another episode of the A-Team at New Beginnings Farmstead. I'm Elisa. We have Egidio over here, Jeff, Ryan, Julie, and joining us is Allan Stenger. Am I saying your last name right?
You are. You got that perfect.
Well, thank you for joining us. And you are joining us from Indiana?
Indiana, yes.
And where in Indiana are you?
So I'm in the southeastern corner of the state. I'm about 40 minutes from Cincinnati, Ohio, actually. It's kind of right where Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky meet.
Oh, wow. Very nice.
I didn't even realize that was maple country.
In fact, we tapped this weekend.
So did we.
Yeah, we did as well.
Tell us about your farm.
So it's a kind of a long story how I ended up being in the maple business. My brother, several years ago, tapped some maple trees, made maple syrup. And when I said tap a couple trees, he had like 4 big trees, tapped them and made syrup. Well, I live on what it's our family farm, been in the family for over 100 years. And I realized, hey, I've got a bunch of maple trees here. So the first year I tapped, I don't know, a dozen of them. What I realized very quickly is tapping maple trees is probably a lot like being addicted to a controlled substance, because next year I did 20, then 30, then 40, went from buckets to bags to vacuum tubes. So it didn't take long.
So right.
Yes.
Yeah, it's an addiction. There's no doubt about it. I tell everybody that. I said, I've never been addicted to anything until I started tapping maple trees.
So you said your family farm, it's over 100 years. So tell us about that. Tell us about the original family farm.
Yeah,
What's
so
the name of your farm?
I call the place Stenger Sugar Shack. It's the Stenger family farm. So kind of a long story. My dad grew up here. My grandparents grew up here. My great-grandparents owned it. Back in 2002, I moved to Florida. I thought I was going to live down in the Florida Keys the rest of my life. After, 4 hurricanes and a divorce, I tell everybody, I moved back to Indiana and decided to move back to the family farm, which had been the farm itself, the farmhouse, which is pre-Civil War, had been vacant since the 70s. My grandparents bought a mobile home and put in front. It was supposed to be a temporary thing, and they were going to build a house in the front lot. Well, it's the first time my grandmother had running water and a toilet and a shower. They never moved out of the trailer. So I came back from Florida and decided I was in the construction industry. So I decided, you know what? At first I was going to tear the house down because it was in disrepair, but I ended up saving the house, adding to it. So we have the family farm back intact. So when I started doing the maple syrup, I decided to call my business Stenger's Sugar Shack. So that's how it got the name. Like I said, I started out with, just a few taps, then that moved to a couple hundred taps. So I'm not a big farm, but down in southeastern Indiana, I'm, a pretty good size because we have a very short window here for maple syrup, as you might expect.
Wow.
So we'll be lucky to have syrup through the month of sap running through the month of February. Usually the first week in March. The last several years it stopped. Last year was just not a good year at all. It didn't start till late and it ended early. Wow. So we're hoping not for that same thing this year. We've been extremely cold this year, which we haven't had for many years, and a lot of snow. I went to Jamaica 2 weeks ago. It was 85 there. I came back to southeastern Indiana. It was -5. So that's not something that I look forward to ever again. We got a foot of snow before I left. I had 4-foot drifts. And like I said, for this area, that's a lot of snow and a lot of drifts. Wow. Quite honestly, it's the most snow for probably 20 years here. I remember the winters of 77 and 78 where we had 4 feet of snow and 10-foot drifts. So fortunately, we don't have that going on.
Wow.
So Go ahead.
Do you just tap sugar maple, or do you have other kind of species that you also tap?
So I'm going to shock you. I don't have any sugar maples tapped. They're all red maples. My entire tapping system of trees is all red maples, and I have a lot of them. And I find, believe it or not, all mine are my sugar bush is kind of along a creek, so they all run along the creek. And I have good sugar content comes out of the sap to start with. A lot of people, it's amazing how many people tell you you can't tap anything but a sugar maple, and that's people that don't understand. There are other maples out there you can tap. So I have fun with that every year. When we do a big Indiana Maple Syrup Producers Association does a maple syrup weekend every year, and I have fun at that because I'll have people come here and say, "Yeah, how many sugar maples you got?" And I'm like, 0. They're all red maple.
So, are there other people in the area that are tapping sugar maple, or do they?
Yeah, there are. About a half hour from here, there's a farm that has about 3,000 taps. They're sugar maples. And about 20 minutes the other direction, they have several hundred taps as well, and they're sugar maples. Wow. I just happen to have a bunch of red maples. So I'm making use of what I've got.
That's it. What do you do with your product?
So I started out just, I'll be honest, I started out giving it away. Then I realized, hey, there's more here. I joined the Indiana Maple Syrup Association. And like I said, they do a maple syrup weekend every year. So I'm big into networking. In fact, I'm actually president of our county chamber of commerce because I look forward to helping folks and trying to network and make things bigger. So I decided we were going to do a maple syrup weekend here, but I was going to invite other vendors besides just maple syrup. So I invited a couple of folks that did honey, that did handcrafted items, and for a small producer like I am, we ended up with the biggest maple syrup weekend crowd out of all the producers in Indiana because we were marketing to more than just people that wanted maple. So that's how I started selling my syrup. I have an online page as well, but I decided I wanted to do more. So there's a couple steps here. In 2020, in 2019, I started producing beef jerky as well. One of my maple syrup weekends, it's like, I need more than just maple syrup and maple cream. I need something more. And I thought, I've got a good beef jerky recipe. I wonder what that would taste like if I added maple syrup to it. So I did a maple pepper beef jerky, sold out the first 2 hours we were open. I'm like, I got something here. So I started doing actual beef jerky, producing beef jerky, selling beef jerky in 2019. Then 2020 hit and a couple things happened. One, I got COVID real bad, about died. So after I was, well, I was what they call long COVID. I just had no energy. And I'm like, and I had people knocking and calling and emailing about the beef jerky. And I'm like, well, I got to figure out how I can continue the beef jerky because I don't have energy to do it now. So I ended up farming it out to a third party, major manufacturer that uses my recipes. And we have a non-compete each way. They can't use my recipe. And so I grew the jerky business and the syrup business at the same time, which led to in 2022 opening up a storefront in the historic town of Metamora, Indiana. We have a store called the Sap Bucket, rather fittingly. Yep. My wife and I started that. It started out in my mind, it was just going to be maple syrup and honey. And well, it ends up being a major, it's a gift shop. We have, all our beef jerkies, all our maple products, but we have tons and tons of other products in there as well. Far surpassed my expectations. When I did my business plan and what I thought, because we started out leasing the building, and quite honestly, after the first year, it was like, well, it's time to buy this building because I want to do more alterations to it. I'm not going to do that unless I own it. So it's been a success for us. We sell lots of syrup out of there. I sell syrup online as well as the beef jerky. So keeps us busy.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So what was being produced on the original farm with your parents and
It
your grandparents?
was cash crops, quite honestly. And there's still, up until 2020, there still was some cash crops things going on. We had some cattle here as well. I just don't have time to do all that right now. So I'm concentrating. And I'm director of construction for a major construction company in Cincinnati. So I have that going on as well as my own businesses. Once my kids grew up, who helped do all that and moved out, it's just me and my wife here. So I decided to concentrate on, we opening our business in the town of Metamora, which took up a lot of time. The town of Metamora is a historic town. They're open mainly between April through December. I break that mold because I'll be open starting next week. We have a lot of people that come back as repeat customers. Besides the tourist crowd, the repeat customers come for the jerky, the maple syrup. I have friends who have apiaries, so we have a couple of different honeys there. So it keeps us busy.
Yeah.
And so the farm's been in your family, and who will you pass it on to?
It'll be passed on. I have two sons, so that's what's going to go from here to there.
Do they know that?
They do know that. They don't know to what extent, They're just interested in the antique tractors at the moment, I think, but there's a lot more to this and that. And my parents wanted to move here, so we built a house for them, I guess 2015. So they live on the property as well. Not too close, but close enough.
How many acres do you have?
There's only 40 acres here, but that's enough.
Right.
Very nice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Did we ask how many taps do you have?
I have about 250 taps this year. I didn't, and I got some more I can tap. I just haven't tapped them all. I got to tap some more this weekend. So we went from being super cold to all of a sudden being able. I mean, it was in -10 or -5, I guess, until the middle of last week.
Yeah.
So obviously, I'm not going to go out and tap when it's -5.
We would.
That's right.
We did.
And are you on vacuum?
Yes. Well, I use a guzzler sap pump.
I don't know what that means.
So I don't need a releaser or any of that. I don't know if you guys ever seen the guzzlers. Yeah.
And do you use wood for your
I do. I use wood. So my setup, I have a 325-gallon tank on one side of the creek because our biggest part of the maples are on the opposite side of the creek from my farm, my barns and things. So I collect in the big tanks, pump it across to a tank on the back of my tractor carrier, take it up, run it through reverse osmosis, and boil it. And yes, we're wood. So
How big is the creek?
it's 12 feet across. I've built a bridge, but I don't want to drive a tractor across it. So side by side goes across no problem, but I don't think the tractor with a bunch of sap on the back of it's gonna work too good.
So I got a question about that guzzler pump setup you're using.
Yes.
On that one, is there an issue with the freeze up? Like, do you have to put a strainer or something in the line?
So I do have a strainer in the line, and when it gets down to freezing, you're really not supposed to be running it because what happens if you get shards of ice through there, it can puncture the diaphragm or the umbrella valve, either one. So I usually put it on a timer. I take a look at what the weather is. There's times it won't start till 10 o'clock in the morning because that's when it's going to be warm enough. I don't get ice shards, but I do have a strainer in the line prior to going into the pump.
And what's the power source on that if you have it on the other side of the creek? What are you running, off a generator or?
I have a lot of electric line underground run over to the creek and under the creek.
All right.
Yeah. I started out with the extension cords. That was a lot of extension cords. And then I actually ran an electric line over there. So
Do you have any staff?
you're looking at them. So what was funny, what convinced me to go to the vacuum tube system is, I don't know, 2016, 2017, I was still doing bags. And I mean, I had probably 5 friends a night come over and help me get all the bags. In fact, they'd get here before I would from work. And after a while, it's like, I can't keep up and I want to make more syrup. So I went to a friend's that was the president of the Maple Syrup Association at the time. I went to his farm, looked at his setup, and I didn't quite want to do the whole releaser and the whole 9 yards because I'm not that big. So I did a lot of research and found that guzzler, and for me, it's worked fine. I know some people don't like those, but for me, for a small operation, it's perfect.
Is that what we have?
No,
What is it?
we have a vacuum releaser. Yeah. I've looked at the guzzler pumps; they work out well. But for us, we just happened to come across a vacuum system for sale that we bought first.
Okay. Wow.
Nice.
Very cool.
So you tapped all of them by yourself?
I did.
You split the
Actually,
wood
I
by
had to.
yourself?
I had to run new laterals in a lot of my area this year. We had a tornado here in July that actually went through part of the woods. So I had to do a lot of laterals. So my sons helped me do all the laterals. The main line we got up pretty quickly. The line had the wire had broke. We got that up, but I needed new laterals because they were all. It was quite a convoluted mess of laterals when a tornado goes through. So did all that. I did have help doing that, and then tapped them.
Is your area prone to tornadoes, or was that highly unusual?
So here's what I'm going to tell you. Growing up as a kid, we never had a tornado here. Last year, we had 2 tornadoes within a mile of each other at different times. So I'm not sure what's going on, but it's a little crazy. Yeah, it hit our barn, hit our house, hit the woods. It was not a enjoyable
Oh my gosh.
20 seconds. I'll just tell you that.
Wow. Oh my gosh. That's something that I don't think most maple farmers have to deal with.
Right. Right.
No.
Do you get hurricanes?
No. Now, when I lived in Florida, I had hurricanes. Actually, it's funny though. Hurricane Ike, I was in Florida at the time, and it was supposed to hit Key West, and it went around Key West. About a week later, I called my parents up here, and they're without electric. And I said, "Why are you out of electric?" Well, Hurricane Ike had come. The winds had come all the way up to Indiana, and just went through power lines, and so not normally, but every now and then.
Wow. You got a lot to deal with that we don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Wow. Well, it seems like you got a lot going on there. That's really amazing that you were able to, even with such a small operation, think of great ways to open up a shop and use other friends and farmers to collaborate on that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
wonderful. What a great idea.
it's great for everybody in the community because I've helped new guys that have started doing maple syrup as well. In fact, I just saw a posting from a guy that used to come here every year and still does for the maple syrup thing. And he tapped his trees this year, and he's actually he got a guzzler like I have. He doesn't have nearly as many trees, but it's an easy way for him because he works, full time as well. So it's great how many people come out to take a look at exactly how we're doing it, what we're doing. And a lot of people don't realize how much work it is. When they see that sap coming out, and I'm like, yeah, it takes about 40 gallons of that for 1 gallon of syrup. They're like, what? I said, that's on a good day.
I'd love to taste your syrup. And now we can say that we know someone whose entire farm is only red maple.
Only red maple. I can send you a bottle. I can make that happen.
Awesome.
That'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be so good.
We would love that.
So how big are your guys' farms?
Not big enough, apparently. She's definitely, and it's tough because the crew we work with, all family here, every time we would go in the woods, is, hey, there's another one over there. There's another one over there. That one's ready.
Not
that wasn't.
not
next
everybody.
year.
Not everybody.
Yeah, my brother-in-law says not. That's true. But yeah, so every year we're like adding another one, another tree, another lateral, and just like you said, it's an addiction.
It is.
Absolute addiction.
It is.
100%. You go to these conferences, and that's where we're trying to. Every year we try to make the New York State Maple Conference, and every year you're looking at the new tech, looking at these different things, and going, man, that'd be nice. Oh, but pre-lashed main lines? Oh, we got to get that. We got to use that, right? The new tools coming out. And
my big thing was going to reverse osmosis. I went from boiling, quite honestly, every single night to being able to condense that every other night because I could run it through reverse osmosis. I was like, I don't know how I can afford, because the big systems are expensive. I was able to find the gentleman who owns the RO bucket. I don't know if you've seen that.
Yes.
It starts out as a small. You can get an RO system that fits in a 5-gallon bucket. I don't have that system. I have 4 membranes in my system, but it's a lifesaver. I mean, I can set when I'm running it on weekends. I got it set to go just about the same speed that the evaporator evaporates. All I got to do is set there and feed the evaporator wood for 8 hours.
Yeah.
So works out pretty good.
So what did we say, about 600 taps is more or less?
Yeah, that's about us. Yeah.
Can you get a little closer?
And we all have full-time jobs also.
Yeah.
Six-
Yeah, so that was a game changer for us, was the RO, and we just upgraded to a larger one last year, 2 membrane, and makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah,
Like you
yeah.
said, at this point, it's really where it is. The efficiency of it is we started in the morning. That night we boil, and usually we can get it all through the evaporator. We got a 3x10 liter evaporator that we have that we came across, but yeah, we started out just building our own stuff like you guys did, and it's an addiction. And I'm telling you, it's getting old fast sometimes. We're like, oh, it's tapping season.
Ain't nothing better at the end of the season when you're pulling your taps. You're like, woo!
Yeah. Someone told us at the beginning, one of our leader dealers that we used to get supplies from, he used to say, listen, there's an old saying in the maple industry. He said, we love to see it come, but we love to see it go.
Yeah.
Yes. That's for sure. Yeah, fast and furious. Thank God it's
But
not
we should take
longer.
a page out of your book and go to Jamaica in the meantime.
Yes.
Yeah, go to Jamaica for a week.
Sounds like a good idea.
That's great.
Well, does anyone else have any other questions?
Oh, great job.
Yeah, we'll definitely look up your store if you want to send me the email or
Yeah. I will do that.
send
Get
me
that sent
your
to you.
website and I'll post that with this podcast and
Sounds
tag
great. Thank
on
you
that.
for having me
Yeah.
on. Much
Thank
appreciated.
you so much.
Yes.
We really
So how long have you
appreciate
guys
it.
been podcasting?
This is almost a full year.
Cool.
We started
Cool.
our first podcast was last June.
Nice. So I'm part of a podcast group outside of maple syrup. So we've been podcasting since 2020. They're like 250 some episodes. Just a fun way to get together. It's a bunch of guys. We sit around our speakeasy bar. We call it the Common Man's Podcast, talk about everyday events, and it's a good time.
Yeah, well, send me that information too.
I'll
I
have
will
to check it out.
definitely subscribe, and I'll send you ours, and hopefully you'll subscribe to our channel and
Absolutely.
we can
Absolutely.
share a podcast.
Because your background looks a lot better than our background.
Well, it's funny because this isn't where I was going to set up. I was going to set up, I have a music studio. I was going to set up there. So you didn't see all the booze back behind me, but
It's good.
That's great.
there's a few bottles.
It's okay. We have a few in the Sugar Shack ourselves.
Well, you got to, and that's a no-brainer.
Long night.
Yeah, no-brainer.
Well, thank you again. We
Thank
really
you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.